Well, indeed, again, thank you for staying with us here on From Kenya. My name is Peter Wakaba. On this part of the show, we will want, of course, to get into a discussion that engages our guest on just what soil biodiversity is and his expertise around that. And to get right into it, Dr. Manoj Kaushal from the Alliance Biodiversity International, or CIAT, he's going to explain that acronym to us in just a few minutes, is a cropping systems expert. He is also an expert in soil health and soil microbe-crop interactions and below-ground soil microbial diversity, integrated nutrient management systems, soil and plant health, plant and crop protection, and disease management. Those being the major areas of his expertise. But I will let him speak for himself. Dr. Manoj, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Yeah, so first off, please start by introducing yourself in the least complicated fashion possible. Tell us what it is that you do.
First of all, good afternoon. Thanks, Peter, for having me.
Yes.
And good afternoon to all your viewers. So myself is Dr. Manoj Kaushal, and I work for, as you said, Alliance of Biodiversity International.
Yes.
And CIAT.
Yes.
It's one of the organization under CGIAR, which is a bigger umbrella organization.
Yes.
It's a consultative group of international agriculture research, where they have a different 15 centers across the globe, and Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT is one of them. The headquarters is based in Rome, but I am personally based in Nairobi in Kenya.
Yes.
And I'm a soil health scientist working into different soil problems and looking for how to improve the soil health as well as improving the farm productivity.
So what is soil health? You see, you're a soil health scientist. People know human health, animal health. We were talking about vaccines there. What is soil health?
So the soil health is, I guess, is people understand with the help of human health. Human health,
Yes.
when we talked about, means human is healthy when he is fully functional. The same way we can say it's a soil health. Soil health is the capacity of the soil when it has full ability to function and to perform the functions for the crop growth and the production systems. So that's what we call the soil health, when it has a full ability to give back to the crops and to the plants to perform at the maximum position, so that we will get the maximum beneficial in terms of the production systems in our crops, nutrient efficacies, and so on. Yeah.
So in your opinion, what then would you call healthy soil? So that if we said that I have a farm, or this is a forest, and this place has healthy soil, how would we be able to differentiate that from soil that we would say is not healthy?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. The healthy soils is probably we can differentiate easily from unhealthy one. The healthy soil always have a better organic matter content in the soil. It has a better retention capacities in terms of water retention capacities, have an optimum moisture content in the soils, and less prone to the disease and the pest. Otherwise, as well as the other abiotic and biotic stress conditions compared to the non-healthy soils. So that's what we perform we can call it as a healthy soil, and always it is better in terms of the growth and the productivity of the crops.
For a long time, people thought that soil health is a thing that just happened, such that if I'm a farmer, I inherited or bought my land, there's soil in the ground, so it should be healthy and should be able to support anything that I want within reason in that ecosystem. And we're starting to learn that this is not the case. Now, is this just something that has developed because of modern technology, or is it something that has been there over time? And how come we never used to hear about soil health before?
I think that has been there over time, but the thing is that when there was a lot of push towards the use of the heavy machineries, modern equipments, as you said, use of fertilizers, and there was only one push towards improving or increasing the productivity. But besides, we are kind of a little bit forgetting about our soil health, that apart from productivity, we need to consider to improving our soil health so that remains sustainable and healthy over the years, and that also helps for the future generations or the future people who are coming in the farming systems. So that has been over time still under consideration, but in a very little amount. While there has been a lot of push towards reducing the poverty, improving the economics and the livelihoods, and so somehow it has been pushed behind. But now a good thing is that people have started talking about a lot of agroecology practices, soil health, and improving farming systems in a sustainable manners. So that's how brought the soil health in the mainstream of our agriculture.
There are those who say, just like they are saying about climate change now, that soil health is a hoax, so to say, is not true, is not important, that the soil will always take care of itself, that human beings as farmers, as people who interact with the land, don't necessarily have to interfere with it, use it in one way or another, that nature will take care of itself. Do you think that's the case?
I think we need to take care of reverse, I would say, for the soil, because soil, if I can define in terms of, I can call soil in terms of abbreviation, that is a soul of infinite life. What we called about soil biodiversity, it has multiple lives in it, starting from small microbes like from bacteria, fungi, to go to the large number of macrofauna like earthworm and termites. So unless we don't care about the soil, it will not care for us, because soil is a living organism, is a living body. So what we have put into the soil, or let's say if we are relying on a chemical fertilizer or the pesticide, there should be someone in the soil who can push back, who can mobilize the inputs that will reach our crops, will reach our plants, so that we can have an optimum number of productions or optimum number of the productivity of crops. So I wouldn't say that we can leave soil as it is on, but we need to equally care the soil health as much as we are caring for our farm productivity and the cropland systems.
Let's then talk about, because that's macro, let's then talk about individual farmers. How would I as a farmer be able to gauge whether my soil is healthy or not? What are the things I can do to get that information?
Yeah, I think first of all, there are different components where we consider the healthy soil in terms of the physical, chemical, and the biological. There are some laboratory components. Of course, the farmers needs to rely on that extension worker and the researcher, but there are some in-house or the inbuilt indicators where the farmers can realize that the soil is healthy. For example, organic matter content. And when you see the soil is dark brown to black in color, it means it has an enough amount of organic matter. The second is the most important thing is having the crop residues in the soils, having the optimum amount of the moisture content. It should not be to look too dry or too wet. And the major important in terms of the biological is looking for the biological indicators. For example, the presence of termites and the earthworms. When you see the scrolling that in the soil, it means your soil are really healthy and lively, so that the soil life is also happy and they perform better.
Everything you're saying, Doctor, then seems to be at loggerheads with, so to say, modern monolithic, monocultural agriculture. Because you'll go find a large-scale maize, large-scale wheat, large-scale other crop farmers, and they'll say that some will even insist that they want to use hydroponics to grow their stuff so that they can then control the soil fully. They say that termites will eat the roots of their crops and that sort of thing. They say that some of these things are pests, they'll interfere with them. Where is the balance?
Yeah, I think for me, I would prefer to do the diversified cropping system, and then when we go to the farmers, because this is the monocropping is one of the unsustainable land use practices, and where you are again playing with your soil health and killing your soil biodiversity.
But so it's also one of the most prevalent currently in terms of the larger ones.
Yeah, exactly. And because that's, again, I would say the pushback from the use of the fertilizer, and also there is a pushback from the value chain perspective, the push from the market values, and the market access is the most important. And that's what the smallholder farmers almost concerns about the markets. But again, I would say there are some intercropping systems, like let's say the horticulture system, which are called the small volume but the large value systems, and that give a a return in a very small time and in a small period of the time. So it should not be like that. And so the diversified cropping system, one or another way, helping you for improving your farm productivity and diversifying your incomes, and also sustaining your soil health for having the various types of the biodiversity in the soil.
Yes. So when you look at our farmers, especially at the smaller level, for years, for decades, we've gotten told that the smart agricultural practices, the practices to follow, are those that are pushed by the multinationals, the ones which large-scale farmers have had over time, so that you will then find that even at household level, people are pushing the same international breeds and varieties of maize, same varieties of other staples that have got the international value chain and are grown as just monocultures and mostly are addicted to fertilizer, and you cannot replant. This is exactly the opposite of what you're talking about. If we are to think about sustainability, especially in view of the fact that most of our farmers are small-scale farmers, do you think that there's a better chance for sustainability and better livelihoods under the biodiversity agriculture?
Indeed, I think so, because the small-scale farmers especially have now almost at the point where they are understanding about the importance of their soil health, importance of soil biodiversity, and how to sustain their farm in terms of the long-term gains and the long-term productivity. You are right, because there was a long pushback for a very long period of the time in terms of for using the monocropping systems, hybrid seeds, hybrid fertilizers, and so. And most of them, when I go to the field and I hear the stories that they are provided that onto the credit-based systems, and where the farmers cannot even replicate the seeds. So somehow, and also there's a factor of nutrition among them. So to cover all these things and to cope up with all these things, I think the farmers have realized that their traditional practices was much better, and like preserving and using the indigenous seeds, where farmers are exchanging seed among themselves in a local place. And the indigenous seeds, in fact, are also more sustainable and more thriving in a changing climate scenarios at any local conditions. So the smallholder farmers are really, I'm happy to say that they realize the things, and they are now towards into more sustainable practices, into nature positive practices.
When you look at most African value chains today in the agriculture space, everything from market systems to even getting these seeds into the ground, there's government in the background, either doing policy, the support aspects like extension and that sort of thing. And so far, they have supported the monolithic international value chains, where we are getting seeds from a multinational or a local company that's doing this, but then expecting large swaths of farmers in one area to grow one crop because of, so to say, ease of marketing or the creation of staples. How then do you start to come up with policy that will enable the broad-based application and adoption of the things that we are talking about, with a view towards also freeing up consumers from having to just depend on one sort of staple and that sort of thing, then thus creating pressure on farmers, who then put pressure on the soil?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and the answer relies on the recently held African Fertilizer and the Soil Summit in Nairobi,
yes.
In the month of May, where I was really happy, and I was always asking that the policymakers, when they talk about the soil health, should put soil biodiversity, or when they talk about soil, put soil health as in soil biodiversity in the center of all the policies, all the policy makers. So, and I'm happy to share that there was a lot of discussion around the 3 days there summit, and the head of states was there for Kenya, as well as there was other head of states, and they really together agreed that we need to have a plan for the soil health and the soil biodiversity to put into the mainstream, so that the small scale farmers can be benefited, and instead of relying completely on the fertilizers or on the production systems. So I think slowly the things are really changing and is moving, and which are really helping farmers. Of course, apart from the policies, I think the researchers and the extension workers really play an important role to bringing that policies from the government practice to the single or the smallholder farmers. So I think the things are really on track now.
Yes. Yeah. Let's then talk about the fact that when most people hear soil biodiversity, they go straight to soil testing. And you're telling us that it's not just about soil testing, that there's much more to that ecosystem to understand what exactly the quality of your soil is. How would a farmer then be able to localize that knowledge depending on their various geographies? There are farmers in Northeastern who will do crops, but on a different kind of soil. There are others in many different parts of the world where the soil is different.
Yeah, I think the farmers, since they are farming long-term, they have a long-term experience of doing the different farming practices. And also they have also changed seen the changes in the soils and the plants they are doing. But there are some of the factors that farmers can realize while their soil are changing, and either they are improving the productivity or they are not. Because one and the foremost important is the growth and the production systems.
With or without fertilizer, sorry.
So this should be, when we talked about the soil biodiversity, is completely soil life, which is present in the soil.
Yes.
So when you are putting a fertilizers, it means you are hampering with them, you are playing. But of course, the soil biodiversity is important, what the inputs you are giving in the soils and to mobilize the things. Suppose you are giving any essential nutrients for any crop around the world which is required, nitrogen, phosphorus or potassium. So then there are the soil biodiversity or the soil microbes that mobilize their that nutrients and help them to uptake, to make available to the plants. Plant root cannot come and take the nutrients. So that's why the role of biodiversity or the soil microbes comes in to helping in terms of a higher nutrient uptake, in terms of a higher water retention and the uptake by the plant roots.
We have entire swaths of this country, places like the central rift region, Kitale, that sort of area, where fertilizers have been used for a very long time. And the soil acidity problem became very big, in fact, even became political. But then the government subsidy program is also in the same sort of trap where we are seeing the handing out of vast quantities of nitrogenous fertilizers. This to me would compound the problem of acidity. What should we be looking at so that we can then say that either one, government is giving specific fertilizers for specific areas that would then assist farmers with the challenges that they have, or then move to something that does not necessitate the delivery of nitrogenous fertilizers, so that then we say that farmers are beginning to go back to biodiversity, where you then go back to either organic fertilizers or things like minimum tillage, which would then encourage you to reincorporate the material you've taken up out of the soil. Where do we go?
Yeah, I think that's again a very good question. So this all completely, the system becomes like a different indicator, so the different types that makes a soil healthy. When I talked about organic matter, that's the one thing. The pH was talked about, we know the soils around us is a very acidic.
Yes.
So the solution for that is to bring into the lime or the calcium carbonate to adjust the pH of the different condition, because that's the one and the most important thing for the healthy soils: pH, organic matter, the climate scenarios, and the land use practices. We should avoid using high amount of the tillage, overgrazing of the farms, which makes the soils very compact and that close the pore spaces. And try to do as much as diversified cropping systems in the intercropping and avoiding the monocropping system. So all these are the I would say the minimum indicators which farmers can immediately can do and can work on themselves, and they can see the difference between the healthy and the unhealthy soils. So yeah.
When you look at the things our farmers have gotten used to, and based on the things you've said, it's very difficult. It's been very difficult to get our farmers to start thinking differently. So that when you talk about grazing patterns, when you talk about minimum tillage, every planting season you see tractors going into farms and overturning the soil, digging it foot deep, bringing what would have been the topsoil 3 feet under, that sort of thing. Really devastating for the soil. We have had advocates of people who simply say you use something like a chisel and plant your crops in that to retain the moisture, but many farmers will not believe it. How do you drive behavior change that then starts to holistically and in broad-based fashion start to adopt the concepts that you're talking about? Where do we even start? Or to think about it in a different way, Are there examples of places that you can point to that we can say, hey, it's happening in that place, and maybe we can borrow that example?
Yeah, I think that's really an important thing. And now when we are talking about sustainable practices and agroecologic practices, so the important component, one of the, apart from economics and the human and the environmental values, the important component comes in that agroecologic practices is the social behavior and how we'll change the behavior in different type of the practices. So currently, I think we are promoting that nature positive solutions and we have 2 aggregated farms in Kisumu and 1 model farm in Vihiga, where we are trying to bring such kind of an agroecologic practices, and not only the farming practices, but we are also working on different social behavior and how to change. And so I think seeing is believing. So the farmers only believe when they see it. So that's what we are right now trying. And when the farmers, they are doing, and this we are doing along with the participatory approach. It means the farmers are leading the different experiment, different model farms. So once they do, they believe on that one, they try to promote. They go to the neighbor and they promote their things. So I think that's the one of the important way where we can slowly start with the small scale farmers and try to replicate in different farms, and that also, apart from the farming systems, as you said, it's very important to change the behavior to adopt of the sustainable practices and different type of agroecological practices which are currently really required.
We've seen in even entertainment and television production, things like on Clarkson's Farm, the fact that the global market is starting to move towards some of the things that you're talking about, where they're going back into some sort of mixed cropping. Incidentally, he did wheat and beans in the same field, really interesting concept. And of course, with mixed results, lower productivity. But then allegedly the purchases, the output was sold to large UK retailers, and the prices were more than 3 times the usual average. So something for farmers to think about. But how then do we start to enable the demands of the market, the push for sustainability, the push for people who are interested in green living, minimum impact on the environment, that sort of thing, start to percolate to the farmer, so that in places like Kenya, we can then say that people are actually starting to farm in a certain way because that's what the market wants. It seems today to me like the discerning market that can dictate what sort of crops they want to come to market, grown in a certain way, is still very small. That market is nascent. How do we grow it?
Yeah, I think the market is always a big pressure for the farmers, and especially for the small scale farmers when we talked about. But the good thing and the important thing is that we are bringing the point of the sustainability here. But apart from sustainability, we need to take care about the growing food demand and the productions, and so to meet the food demand of the things like that. So while we are taking care about the sustainability and the farming practices, I think it's also important to consider about the production system where we are growing and how much we are growing. And this brings about, along with the sustainability, a very important factor of the nutrition. When we talked about fertilizers, we are almost forgetting about the nutrition conditions.
Yes.
And when I was watching your bulletin, when we talked about a lot of nutrition in the school children and things like that, and the 18% were really devoid of the nutrition. I think that's a very important thing where the sustainability and the agroecologies and the soil biodiversity plays a role in bringing in meeting the growing food demand, as well as bringing the nutrition component into it, which really market doesn't give you currently. I would say, because they have a lot of pressure on the another things what you said about production and the economics and the beneficial in terms of the other things. Yeah.
Well, it's been an interesting discussion so far, and of course we want to get into the indicators above the soil that would tell farmers how their soil is working and how it's looking. But before we do that, Dr. Manoj, we want to proceed to a short commercial break. On the other side of the break, the discussion, of course, will continue here on Farm Kenya on KTN News. We, of course, still have about 20 minutes of this show to go, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.